Hey there, and happy Friday. It's The Hash. I'm Zach. We got Will. We got Jen. We got Naomi. We're here to talk about some stuff. I think Naomi's going to start us off. Naomi, what's up?
Interesting news from Ray Dalio. So earlier this year, we found out it was actually, I believe it was a CoinDesk scoop earlier, that Ray Dalio was involved with Bitcoin. And so that was big news. Turns out he's actually involved with Ether as well. We don't know what else. He basically called cash a worthless investment, said the cryptocurrencies are looking really interesting, especially when we're dealing with 4 to 5% inflation of the US dollar. So it was pretty interesting news that he's just like, he dipped his toes in with Bitcoin and now he's diving right in. I'm going to throw this to the group for your take. What are your thoughts on Ray Dalio becoming this new kind of crypto advocate in the space? Will, I'll throw to you to start off with.
Yeah, I want to add a quote from the article here.
Will is muted.
Will's muted.
Will's muted.
No way.
He's muted.
Silent.
I'm going to give it to Zach.
No, he's muted. Dang. All right. Yeah, I'll take it. Wait. There he is. Now. Will, say something.
There you go.
We can hear you. Sweet voice.
I swear, it's been an awful Friday. We just fixed our control a second ago, and then it happened again. Okay, but let's go to the story. I want to go to a quote from Ray Dalio here, which is, again, really interesting. Naomi, you kind of put the nail on the head there. Ray Dalio has always been like against crypto in the past, but now he's like into it, and he's holding Ether. He's an Ether whale. Probably not a whale. But he says, I view as an alternative money in an environment when the value of cash money is depreciating in real terms. And I think it's very impressive that for the last 10 to 11 years, the programming has held up. It hasn't been hacked. It has an adoption rate. I think that's pretty important for someone like Ray Dalio, who's looking for a return on his investments in a time when there is zero yield on any asset that you're holding, right? You can get stocks, but you're not really going to beat inflation. You can get treasuries. You're not really going to get over 1%. You can look at real estate. It's pretty bought out at this point. So maybe you can look at cryptocurrency, look at digital assets and say, hey, there's something here for the next 5-10 years where I can get a nice return on my investment. That's pretty notable. I think it's also notable that you kind of touched on the tech side here. There has been no hacks. There has been no like breaks in the programming. I mean, if you looked a little bit deeper into like the consensus and all that stuff, you'd know that like Bitcoin and Ethereum have had problems in the past, but for him, for someone who's kind of looking at the high level, these things are still working and kind of clock along. Zach, I'll throw it up to you.
Yeah, Dalio is seen as a sage for the Wall Street set. So he often pens these sort of like magnum opuses about like grand trajectories of the world. So definitely carries weight when he goes out here and says, yeah, I got Bitcoin, but also, hey, I got Ether too. Doesn't own a lot of it, but it is interesting to see that he's getting into it a little bit further than just the old boomer Bitcoin. So the fact that this is happening is super interesting. And I think, that we've it's kind of established at this point that, institutional Bitcoin became a thing over this past cycle. Institutional Ether is absolutely a thing as well, right? We're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of belief that there's still upside in this particular digital asset. And I think, when Ray Dalio comes out and puts his stamp of approval on it, I would imagine that more institutional investors would follow suit. So it's going to be interesting to see this. Maybe institutional ETH becomes the story of 2022 in a way that institutional Bitcoin was really the story of 2021. But I will wrap that thought here now that it's just me, and I will throw it to Jen.
All alone. Here I am.
Look at this.
Okay, well, now that it's just me on the screen, I just think it's so important to talk about stories like this. I think there's such a large group of people out there who don't really what's happening in the end. It's important for people like Ray Dalio to come out and explain in a really simple way why cash is becoming worthless. I think there are a lot of people out there who still feel like when I have cash, I have cash. They don't really understand inflation. And when it comes to how they invest their money and what they're doing to hedge against that inflation, they're not really doing their research. They're basing what they do off of the advice of friends and family, maybe. And so it's really important, I think, when people like Ray Dalio come out and kind of explain in a really simple way why we should be at alternatives, especially in the current financial state. So I thought this story was really awesome. And I think that we actually learned that Ray Dalio held Bitcoin at consensus. Did we? Or was it before that?
We did. Yeah,
it was
that was
consensus.
That was a consensus.
But Naomi, I'll pass it back up to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what Will was saying, his comment about the code, because I think we take the code for granted a lot. And we're like, this is an immutable ledger and it's always going to be around and it's a great, digital thing filled with software. And as we've seen with like every DeFi project, code is really difficult to get airtight. It's not even possible for code to be airtight, and people are constantly finding bugs. So I don't think we should take this for granted at all. I definitely think it's important to be cognizant that there are real people working on this code, real people finding bugs, real people fixing bugs. These people need funding and resources. There's been a big push in the Bitcoin community recently to get some more of those resources so that we can keep this airtight. I don't be aware that there are risks involved with cryptocurrency. And just because we've been for however many years without something catastrophic happening on the Bitcoin network, then, it is still an open question, and this stuff is constantly being updated. So just be aware of the risks that you're taking in this.
Are you flooding
Obviously,
the chain?
I'm totally bullish. I just want people to have a very realistic assessment of the situation and not think that just because it hasn't been hacked, it's never going to be hacked. I think that we mentioned on the show the other day that what's interesting now is you have all these kind of honey pots with this giant target symbol on them in the form of DeFi now. So less people are trying to attack the chain itself because there's just like billions of dollars locked up in DeFi. And a lot of that code hasn't been audited to the same extent that the main layer one chains have. So it is interesting that kind of dynamic has shifted the focus away from, underlying blockchains. But just be aware there is still a risk. But changing topic there, huge news, Zach. What's going on?
Justin Sun. Let's talk about Justin Sun, everybody. Justin Sun has found the next thing that he's going to copy, and it is El Salvador. And he's talking about crypto at the nation state level, inspired by Bitcoin as legal tender in El Salvador. I'm a Justin Sun fan. He is a contentious fella. He's always sort of, stirring up controversy around himself and always trying to sort of get himself into the conversation. He has a thick skin. He's a smart guy. And our colleague Mu Shen talked to him about his grand plans. He's leaving Tron. The Tron Foundation is being dissolved. He's going to leave the governance of the Tron blockchain to Tron holders and other stakeholders. And he's going to become an ambassador from the country of Grenada to the World Trade Organization, which is some sort of weird signal about where we are in crypto right now. And I don't know what it is. I think we could go a lot of ways with this conversation. Justin Sun remains an interesting character in the crypto space. I'm going to throw it straight to Will, actually, because I don't know. What are your thoughts when you see this? What are you thinking? What do you think about this?
Just put a big smile on my face this morning when I saw that headline. That's what I'll say right off the bat. I will also say that if he's dissolving the Tron Foundation, he says he's leaving the ecosystem. Doesn't really make sense because he's still a mega whale in terms of Tron, and it's a proof of stake system. And we've seen in the past that he's been able to go in and change things on chain just by like the way his tokens kind of vote. If you remember like the Hive debacle from like 2 years ago, Brady Dale, some awesome articles on CoinDesk. You can go back and read those. Justin Sun is like, he gets in there. He gets into the politics of the Tron blockchain quite a bit. And I don't see him kind of moving on from that, maybe for like 6 months, kind of this political stunt and do that. But that's kind of an aside from the main story. It's interesting to see someone of his figure jumping into like the political side of things. And it makes sense with when you're looking at some of the other players who have been getting into like the larger political ecosystem. This might be kind of too far off to the side, but SBF and FTX have just moved to the Bahamas, right? And they moved there just because it's easier to do things there. There's like more legal sanctions. As these like small Caribbean nations, you can kind of operate close to the US, but outside the borders, so you can kind of operate your own business however you want. This seems to be like a similar play in the stance that he's going to a small Caribbean country and going to be working with them on crypto adoption. I think that is going to be like a continued storyline we see with a few other players going forward. Did I see it with Justin Sun? No, I didn't. So that's why his headline was fantastic. Naomi, I'll throw it up to you.
Yeah, I have a lot of takes on this. I'm going to take a step back from the Justin hating because I actually like Justin. I think he's a very interesting entrepreneur. Contentious, obviously, but very interesting. And I just want to point out, I mean, we could dig into that, but I'm so sick of that sphere just being put. Like, I mean, it's It's ridiculous. Everything in crypto is literally open source code. Like you can copy and paste whatever you want. But let's actually look at what he said, because he's 100% correct here. And I think that like he's on the money right now. He says we cannot fully rely on the US market. There are nearly 8 billion people in the world, and the US only has 300 million people. The US market should not decide on crypto with more than 7 billion people left in the rest of the world. He's absolutely right. We've just gotten through all these congressional hearings where US politicians are acting like they completely control crypto all over the world. And let's face it, they do, because they have controlling interests in all of these, multinational organizations, that actually get to decide things like the travel rule and, these are just guidelines. But the US has the ability to sanction any country that doesn't approve of whatever their policies are. You have, the whole BitMEX scenario where they were literally blocking the IP address of US customers. You had the people who controlled BitMEX not even living in the US. The company wasn't registered in the US, and yet they were able to arrest people involved with this because it didn't apply with US law. I am so sick of the US controlling crypto around the world, and I think that it's a smart play to start working on these smaller countries. Get some rallying support from places that maybe have interests outside of the US. I think that it's very interesting what El Salvador is doing right now. They're in a very unique position because they are dollarized. Since 2001, they have used the US dollar in their economy rather than the colon. And because of that, they haven't had a central bank controlling their money supply. They haven't, had to give up any power by embracing Bitcoin. It's a lot more difficult for a government to embrace Bitcoin if it means that there might be a chance this thing could undermine the purchasing power of their sovereign currency. So I think that looking at other countries that are also dollarized, that don't have their own central bank, is a very interesting play. I hope that's the direction he's going in, not just saying, let's Latin America in general. Let's focus on the places that are dollarized. But I absolutely think that if we can get a bunch of countries on board and just get this, support brewing, that's a very interesting play to me, because the US right now is just dictating terms for the whole world, and it's absolutely ridiculous and needs to stop. But I'll throw to you, Jen.
Justin Sun becoming a diplomat wasn't on my 2021 bingo card, but it also put a smile on my face this morning. To the copy and paste comment, though, Will, I think if you look at most successful businesses, I don't think you can find one that hasn't copied something from another one.
Okay, but it's a little different when it comes to Tron. It's well known that he steals stuff from Geth. It's the same. Binance does it too.
It's well talked about. There are a lot of things that are well talked about. Because there's a lot of parroting in the crypto space. A lot of people who like to think that they've looked into the details of something and all they've done is read a headline, and then they go and perpetuate some narrative about someone and smear their character. I'm not here to demonize successful
every
people.
Smear campaign.
Absolutely. There's a little truth, but I just wish people understood the nuance of that truth and weren't just parroting headlines, which they always do. And it's just, endemic in the crypto Twitter population. It's, there's crazy population.
But anyway,
I'm sorry, I'll throw back to you.
Yeah. Jen, go ahead. We'll just argue.
No, I was gonna take a long-winded path to get to this question, but I'm gonna get straight to it. Will, maybe just talk us through a quick notes on the controversy surrounding Justin Sun, because we haven't talked about that, and maybe give everyone some context.
Where should we begin? I think Zach can provide some insights as well, since his time as editor here at CoinDesk. I think that the thing that comes to mind is, yes, a lot of the Tron software has been pulled from different projects, and that's fine to a degree. But the thing that pisses people off in the crypto ecosystem is when that software, which was intended for a decentralized purpose, where anyone can use it, anyone can look at the code, anyone can run it, and there's no figurehead, it was changed so that he would be the only one who could control it. And he was the one who was a beneficiary from all of it. So again, looking back at that Hive story from 2020, 2019, there was a project built on the Tron blockchain, and they didn't want to be involved with the Tron ecosystem, or they didn't want to be involved with Justin Sun. And he came in and basically rolled everything back and changed the protocol. And there was a huge, pretty interesting blockchain war going back and forth just because he was trying to control it and continue to have that project on his chain when an entire
All right,
community
this is this parody. I got to jump in, Will. I got to jump in because we can't spread FUD on this show. It's about getting to the fact on this show and giving people information so they can pass through all the weeds. That's not entirely true how it happened. That's definitely a narrative that people push. But if you actually talk to like the founder of Hype, for example, a great interview where we dive into the details, it wasn't initiated by Justin Sun. What happened was when the handover from Ned Scott went over to Justin, everyone got concerned. The ecosystem freaked out and they made a preemptive move to block Justin Sun from using any of his staked portion. So the idea was that when Steemit was around, there was a big portion of Steemit tokens, and it was just kind of this like unwritten rule that, Ned Scott was never going to use them for staking, never going to use this controlling share to actually make decisions on the network. Now, anyway, there was this handover to Justin and everyone freaked out and said, is he or isn't he? He actually never made any move to control the network right off the bat. But I also understand the Hive community's concern, right? So they preemptively blocked him. This led to a backlash where he went behind closed doors. We don't know what was said behind the closed doors, but he talked to, leaders of exchanges, said like, we've just pushed this new code. Can you please make these changes? He basically like unlocked his stake, and made these changes. And then the community freaked out again. So it was like this back and forth, but I have to reiterate that it wasn't Justin Sun who initiated this. It was the Hive community. And again, I understand where they're coming from because they're worried about centralization, but he didn't actually make any play off the bat to control anything. And I think he gets smeared a lot in that whole debacle there. So just wanted to make that clear. But I think we're changing topics now and go into a break. No. Oh, Zach reaction. Sorry, Zach, you react.
Let's look at this script. Zach reaction. Wow, that's a new one. That's some spicy stuff, guys. Wow, I get uncomfortable when mommy and daddy are fighting, and it makes me nervous. But it was good to watch, and there's a lot to unpack there. So, hey,
I hope someone got a screen grab of Naomi waiting to jump in on Will's point, because that was the perfect.
Where it's like it's just teaming. It's like, please, I gotta talk. Let me say something right now. I'm gonna sing. Don't make me sing.
It's gonna be interesting to see if Justin Sun in the diplomatic arena, like Jen said, if he remains contentious and potentially controversial within the diplomatic arena, or if he is indeed a force for good in spreading some of these technologies to some of these countries in Latin America. That's what I'm going to be watching. All right, let's take a break. We're going to pause right here. And when we get back, we're going to talk about rug pulls. And if you don't know about the word rug pull, you're in for a treat. It's just one of the great crypto words right now. So stay safe out there, folks. Don't get rugged. Stick with us. We'll tell you about that stuff after this short break. All right, it's The Hash. Happy Friday and holidays.
When we say we want to reimagine money, it turns out we're going to the heart of the matter. Imagination has always been a key part of what money is. Imagination, in the form of cultural creativity, is also something that the cryptocurrency community has in spades. And to the outsider, that can be a reason to dismiss it as frivolous, as something built on nothing. To dismiss it for these reasons, though, is to ignore that all money is imagined.
And welcome back to The Hash. So we're talking about rug pulls, which, as Zach was just alluding to before the break, is one of the greatest words to come out of the crypto lexicon. A rug pull refers to when someone just kind of pulls the floor out from underneath you, and all your tokens and all the money you put into a project miraculously disappear and you never get to see them back. And something that happens in DeFi quite often, and we have some numbers this morning to kind of show that, right? So in 2021, we've seen that there's been about $7.7 billion in illicit revenue from tons of different kind of crypto scams out there, and 37% of that $7.7 billion value are from DeFi rug pulls. That's compared to about 1% in 2020. Zach, to me, that just shows DeFi is here now. If there's going to be rug pulls, if there's going to be illicit activity, it means that there's also some good activity going on and people are using the protocols for their intended purpose. 37% is actually a pretty big number. That's a little higher than I would have thought. What's your kind of take on this new number from Chainalysis?
Chainalysis is good at sort of digging in the data and providing reports that are of value to understanding the ecosystem. So shout out to Chainalysis for doing this. But yeah, I think you're right, Will. I think what this is a story of DeFi's growth, right? So DeFi exists on Ethereum and a couple other chains right now. And I think total, including all the chains, it's something like $165 billion of crypto are locked in these various decentralized finance protocols. So when you look at some of these numbers, it's good to sort of situate it in that bigger context. But yeah, rug pulls sort of speak to this social layer, right? They speak to the social layer of some of these technologies where sometimes bad actors can intervene and honest investors, honest farmers in the DeFi lexicon are left out on their bums. So this is a good data analysis. This is something that we've definitely been watching kind of uptick, I think, over the course of the year as DeFi again attracts more usage. And this is a nice sort of meaty data set to look at because there's a lot of good interesting stuff there. I will toss this to Naomi. What are your thoughts about rug pulls?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the start with the code and how secure it is. I think, Will, you brought up a fantastic point where it's like, whenever I go full screen, I'm always just like, it's me. It's very large. Sorry. I was just a little just.
It's you.
We're doing it. The people on YouTube want to see us big. And so we're giving it to them.
I know. It's like, I did demand it. So I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna just deal with it. I think that it's really interesting to watch this space evolve. And as Will said, now I've lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I'm not doing a good job on this. I'm going to give it to Jen, and then I'm going to have a think about what I was going to say before my head got really large.
Pass it back up to you. I think, like Will and Zach was saying, it's really important to see these numbers, but we don't see the other side of the coin. And I think that, I had a little bit of PTSD resurface when I thought about all of the stories that we spoke about this year worth of money. I think Mark Cuban lost $4 million in a rug pull. And when these reports come out, I think the regulators take the numbers and run with them without looking at the other side of the coin. So I would love to see our report on all of the good that DeFi is doing and look at the percentages of people who finally have access to financial products who didn't have access before. And then we could actually compare these numbers and look at the value and weigh that against, some of these rug pulls and make real solutions forward. But Naomi, it looks like you have your thoughts back.
Maybe. It depends if I go large again. All right. If I go
fact check myself real quick. I'm out here spreading bad numbers. All right. The total value locked of all DeFi across various across various smart contract blockchains, $230 billion. So not $165 billion. We regret the error. $230 billion. That's the total DeFi TVL according to data site.
How much
DeFi Llama? All right.
And it depends, like there's DeFi Pulse, there's like CoinGecko, like the numbers are a little flexible as well, keep in mind. Because it's kind of tough to yeah.
Oh, thanks, Naomi. Thanks for picking me up. All right. Back to you. Sorry about that.
I will mention that, the centralization aspect of these rug pulls is super important to hone in on. So if you're getting involved with a DeFi project and there's like 80,000 people in this Discord group and you're like, oh my God, this is so popular. Everyone's getting involved. Someone must have looked at the code. They must have already done an audit. This seems legit. Otherwise, all these people wouldn't be involved. Just take a step back and just dig into it a little more, because a lot of the time this stuff goes out there with a big PR push. There's a lot of marketing around it. There's a lot of hubbub. People fall for it and they get FOMO and they're like, I need to get in quickly because otherwise my time may run out and I will miss the giant, push upwards. And a lot of the time you find out that these DeFi projects have some centralized, hard-coded address where funds are going to, and the liquidity pool is actually completely controllable and not decentralized at all by any sort of governance mechanism. And these people just walk away with cash. And this has happened before, and there are currently lots of very popular projects which people message me about on my channel all the time, and I will refuse to talk about. And you know which one you're mentioning, guys. You know which one. I will not talk about it again after my interview we're with the founder. But things like that have hard-coded address, and all people can say about it to like assuage their concerns is, well, he hasn't rug pulled it yet. He hasn't walked away. Like, you're proven wrong because, you know, this thing never happened that you thought would. The point is that the risk factor is there. And if someone has hard-coded an address into a supposed DeFi project and has control of that address and has not proven that they no longer have control of that address, be very, very careful of said project, because they can rug pull at any time. And that is the point of decentralization, to take out that middleman, to take out that risk factor, and to rely on decentralized code to distribute that power rather than have it in the hands of a few. So just do research before you dive into things. It's super important, guys. But I will throw it to you, Jen.
Yeah, on that note, I think we should move on to a character who I thought I would never be discussing in or on this show, but here we are. So Takashi 69, the rapper, his fans are upset, saying that his NFT project is a huge scam. So Rolling Stone wrote an article centered around a fan named Jacob from London who spent $40,000 on Takashi 69 NFT that the project did not deliver what it promised to. So there's a lot in the story. I thought we could take a step back, because we're always talking about NFT projects that are offering, you know, more than just the image or the JPEG. They're offering, you know, maybe they're going to donate to a charity. Maybe there are in-person experiences. And these NFTs had all of that kind of bundled up, and fans thought they were going to get that. And what fans are saying now is the Discord channel is offline. No charity was ever donated to these in-person experiences that they were promised. No one has ever heard anything from them, and they're feeling like they lost a bunch of money. This in particular spent $40,000, which I think is crazy to spend on these. And have been crazier stories in the crypto space. Zach, I'm going to throw this up to you. I don't know if you read the whole Rolling Stone article, but what do you have to say to people who are putting all of their funds into these random NFT projects?
I'm going to use the expansive definition of rug pull, and I'm going to say, don't get rugged. This is like getting rugged in the NFT context. So yeah, it sucks for these folks. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Will? Are you a Takashi 69 fan? I like his hair.
I just can't. It's like the Island Boys, guys. I think this is pretty predictable, right? Like, there's a lot of people who got involved with these kind of NFT things. Like, this is not the only one. And Rolling Stone and these larger mainstream media pubs can literally just go and pick a story they want, and it's already like handcrafted and baked and just handed out to the populace, right? It's just, here's fresh bread for everybody to talk about NFT scams. It's pretty easy, and this one's notable because it is like 6ix9ine's a huge rapper, and I think he has like somewhat of a cult following now out there, and so people might get interested in it and they want to have like something kind of commemorative for him. And then boom, someone pulls the project. They made a lot of money, and this show keeps going on. So there's a lot of snake oil in NFTs, like we've covered throughout the hash a few times. Jen, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I just have a question for you, Naomi. I guess like everyone has an NFT project. Even Melania Trump yesterday announced that she has an NFT project. What can people do to avoid getting into projects that maybe don't deliver like this one, if anything?
I mean, this one really struck me as a very interesting example, because there are rug pulls before. Like, I interviewed a guy who was like, oh, Daft Punk came out with NFTs. This is awesome. I'm going to buy some. Then suddenly they disappear from OpenSea. OpenSea's like, sorry, we had to delete it because it was a scammer. It wasn't Daft Punk. And the owner's like, so do I get reimbursed? I literally just paid for a thing. They're like, sorry, it was a scammer. They ran away with your money. And so this one's a little different. And I love diving into this because it seems like it was someone actually on his team who took over the project and basically changed a bunch of code behind the scenes. And people were kind of screwed as a result of that. I think the message out of this is, if you're a famous person who's getting involved with NFTs and you hire a team that's like, hey, come and do this whole NFT thing, I don't really understand it. Understand that your brand is on the line and you are liable if your team ends up, crafting all these malicious things that rug pull people. I know that NFT is not natural part of the marketing and the business model of a lot of these entrepreneurs and artists and celebrities. But you need to do your research before you get involved and hurt consumers who are buying your stuff. Make sure you understand what you're doing before you create these NFTs. I would just say that because that seems to be what's happening here. But let's call it a day. Call it a week.
Don't get rugged, people. Stay safe out there. Don't get rugged.
Stay woke.
Don't get woke on the rugged. Everybody don't get rugged.
Awake.
That's the lesson of the week.
On rugs.
All right, we're going to rug ourselves out of this show. We're going to rug ourselves out of this week. We are wishing you a happy weekend. I'm Zach. That's Will. We got Naomi. We got Jen. We're the Hash. We'll be back next week. You have a great weekend. Happy Friday.
Happy weekend.
Bye, folks.
Have a great weekend.